Lowe's knows how to freshen up your yard, and it all starts with mulch. That's why we're introducing Mulch Week during SpringFest with can't-miss savings. Right now, get 5 bags of Stay Green Premium Color 2 cubic foot mulch for only $10. Plus, members earn 5 times the points on select mulch purchases all week long. Lowe's, we help, you save. Valid through 4/9. Loyalty program subject to terms and conditions. Points are awarded on eligible purchases. Details at lowes.com/terms. Subject to change. Excludes Alaska and Hawaii.
Poor Connie Britton. I feel like she's getting so much shade right now. Like, we all love Connie Britton.
Just an example. We love you, Connie. Clear eyes, full hearts. Can't lose.
Welcome to the Ankler Podcast. This is Elaine Lowe of the Series Business Newsletter here at the Ankler on Thursday, April 3rd. Today we're going to talk about Amazon MGM, where studio chief Jen Psaki exited last week. We want to know where that leaves them, particularly their TV operations, which have produced hits like Reacher, Fallout, and Jack Ryan, and also expensive misfires like the $300 million Citadel. The Ankler's own Natalie Jarvie and Leslie Goldberg will be joining us today to talk all about it. We'll also check in with Sean McNulty, author of The Wake Up, who, alongside Richard Rushfield, is in Vegas this week, of course, for CinemaCon. But before we do that, a quick shout about the recent headlines, as you've probably seen everyone's studio giblifying themselves lately. Has AI reached a boiling point? Our own Real AI columnist Eric Barmack seems to think so, following the recent widespread Ghibli-inspired AI drawings on social media using OpenAI's new image generator. I've also written about AI in this week's series Business and how machine learning is poised to remake TV animation as we know it. You can catch both of those stories on theankler.com. But all right, today we are mainly focused on Amazon MGM. And before we welcome Natalie and Leslie onto the show, let's go to Sean McNulty, live from Vegas, where you just, I understand, Sean, sat down last night to watch Amazon MGM's slate presentation. How's it going, Sean?
Nothing like a good 8:15 start time in Las Vegas. You know, I'm getting back to the room at 10:20 to write some analysis for the morning wake up. So yeah, Vegas is going great. Don't I look like I'm well rested? You know, here are my great writing gear that I had. If you haven't seen this video, it's I'm well dressed here in
your half zip sweater, perfect for Vegas in April.
Recording it bright and early in the morning. Yeah, I know. After just sending out a newsletter with I don't know how many words. So yeah, it's good. It's good stuff. Good stuff. Very exciting, Elaine.
Yeah. So I saw your wonderful wake up newsletter. Tell us, what are we missing out there?
We still have 2 more Paramount and Disney to go, but incredibly varied. Warner Brothers, that's been a bit mixed. Like, I think I'm a little more optimistic for more I talk to people this week about it, but I think personally, my own take, people are putting other aspersions on that presentation. I'm like, if you just look at that presentation, leave aside any kind of executive, whatever. And I'm like, yeah, pretty good slate. I take your bets on Superman and Leo DiCaprio on stage.
But Amazon, who did they bring out? If definitely not Jen Psaki.
Definitely not Jen Psaki, no. And they followed Universal, which laid out 10 or 11 trailers earlier in the day. And that was that was literally in 9 months. 13 films in 9 months. They were like, we are the studio of the now. We are the people who are keeping you in business right now. Everybody else is talking about the years ahead. Like, here's our literally 9 months ahead. Boom.
Okay, so real flex from Universal then.
Big flex from Universal. So we got to, but Star Power, there's Scarlett Johansson, Mahershala Ali, and a few people. But Amazon, Chris Pratt, Ben Affleck, John Bernthal. Let's say maybe my list of people.
Right, because they've got Ben Affleck's The Accountant 2 coming out. Right?
Yeah, the big thing there.
I'm looking forward to that one.
Ryan Gosling kicked things off. I would say he had probably, we have 2 more to go, Elaine, but he would definitely probably give the best on stage. Just like, I'm having fun with this copy. It's not that great, and I'm just going to have a good time with this. And we all know what this is.
But which executives did they trot out last night?
Mike Hopkins, opened up. Sue Kroll and Courtney Valenti there, kind of coming out as a tandem, certainly. So those are your kind of your big wigs there to run the show. But yeah, Halle Berry is there, Vivica Fox, so it's a pretty good lineup of talent.
All right. So looking to really turn the tide on the news cycle for them then in the wake of the Psaki news last week.
Yeah, I mean, Mike came out off the bat and was just, we're giving you 15 movies in 2027 and 14 we have for 2026, confirming those numbers we talked about a little bit, alluded to earlier.
Yeah, the 12 to 14 that we were talking about a week or 2 ago.
They're going, and they pretty much announced 12. They didn't, show us all of them, but, said 12 set for 2020, or committed to 2026 already. They'll have 2 more to announce. So that was the start. It's like, all right, theaters, and that volume, 14 a year, it's like, That's like replacing, 20th Century Fox. It's like, that's what that used to be. It's like we lost Fox in 2019, essentially, with the Disney deal. And now this is like, okay, you're bringing this volume back. Because volume is the big question, Elaine, outside of the theatrical window length, which Richard wrote a lot about this week as well.
Yes.
Recommend that. But that's the other thing. It's the window length and volume. And Amazon's coming in, be like, all right, it's a whole new studio that just got added to Hollywood in 2026 in the movie theaters. Again, 2026, not 2025, where we are, unfortunately, right now.
Right.
So take
No.
it as you will.
So it sounds like the main studio that's got it for us this year is Universal then, and everybody's like, all right, just wait for us to come out swinging next year.
Next year, we're coming out. Yeah, Sony's back. Amazon's going to be full-throated. Yeah,
in
Amazon,
2026.
Yeah, Amazon, I think, has 3 theatrical films this year, maybe 4, So yeah, definitely night and day there.
All right. Well, have you eaten anything good while you're there?
I like you put good on there. Have you eaten anything would be probably more of the accurate statement.
What have you eaten in the windowless ballrooms in Vegas?
What have you been handed on small plates? You 6'4" guy here is like, yeah, I know. A lot of, everything I do eat is like, it's either raw fish or sugar, I think, are my two diet staples of the week. So
the two main food categories in Vegas.
I'm just living the life here, Lane. I can see the jealousy on your face. You know how it goes out here.
Well, we look forward to the full report from both you and Richard next week. Thanks so much for joining us, Sean.
Happy to see you. Always great, Elaine. Thanks.
All right, now it's time to take a closer look at the future of Amazon MGM. So let's bring in Natalie Jarvie and Leslie Goldberg to talk about both what went down over there, as well as what advice major industry insiders have for the studio moving forward. Good to have you both.
Hello. Thanks for having me again, Elaine.
So Jen Psaki, as we all know, joined Amazon from NBCU as studio chief in 2018, led the way for the last 7 years until she was ousted last week in a move that it seems no one saw coming even from inside the company. And she's shifted to a first-look producing deal there, as often happens when top executives leave these jobs. Natalie, you and I have reported quite a bit on Amazon Studios over the last couple of years. What's your assessment of the studio and their output in the Psaki era?
Sure. Well, we can start with some positives, right? I think Jen came in and did a really good job of broadening the tent of what an Amazon show could be. Under her predecessor, Roy Price, they were known for kind of prestige-y Emmy darlings like Transparent.
Yeah.
Exactly. Very kind of indie shows. And, Amazon is trying to reach a much, much bigger audience. So, Jen helped them do that. Now, not all of the shows that she presided over were shows that she greenlit, but she did, kind of oversee and shepherd them, onto the air, so to speak. So, she can definitely get kudos for that. But at the same time, I think she also presided over an era of some really big swings and really big misses, both on the TV side and on the film side. She went to Sundance and spent a lot of money for movies that, no one really watched, I don't think. And
think about that Casey Affleck movie?
Manchester by the Sea, that was at least an awards contender. I'm thinking about the Mindy Kaling late night movie that they spent big on at Sundance, and it didn't really hit, I think, the way that they expected. And, on the TV side as well, they took some big swings and misses with shows like Citadel, which I'm sure we'll get into. Even the Lord of the Rings show, while I think, they've touted as a success, hasn't necessarily been the conversation driver that anyone expected or hoped that it would be.
And Leslie, you had a big story in Series Business this week, talking to showrunners, studio executives, agents about Amazon. And you described Psaki's tenure as, quote, arguably chaotic, which, honestly kind of aligns with everything I've ever heard from any producer or agent who's done business there. Disorganized, dysfunctional. Why have there been so many reorgs? I don't know who to call. Has kind of been the review consensus on them for the last couple of years. What were some of the major pain points at Amazon during this period, Leslie?
Well, I think you really hit on it. It's the constant reorganization of the executive side. And if you're an agent with a project and you want to take it out and you don't know who to pitch to, that's a problem. If you're a showrunner with a series at Amazon and your executives keep changing and the creative goalposts keep moving, that's a big problem. And those are two very, very basic things that you need to succeed in television. And when it keeps changing and no one is ever sure over the last 7 years which end is up or what the mandates are or who to call, it's going to be chaotic. And that's literally what I heard from every single person that I interviewed. Is the first thing that they said that everyone told me was, A, she didn't see this coming, and B, what a mess.
You know, they've kind of been known for what everyone sort of semi-derisively calls dad TV over the last few years, you know, or as one agent put it to me once, white man with a gun shows.
Guy with a gun.
They feel like they never really leaned into that identity because it seemed to like broadcast to CBS, but that's also what was working for them. So why not own that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's not sexy, right? Like when Jen Psaki was hired, Seattle really wanted the Game of Thrones version of an Amazon show. You know, they wanted their own Game of Thrones. And that was one of Psaki's big mandates when she came in 2018. And that's, you know, a lot of it, that's why they pursued The Expanse. That was a key Amazon exec's favorite book. And it was a sci-fi show before they canceled it and Amazon was finally able to get their hands on it. But that's why you see a lot of the big spending on these like genre shows. I mean, $250 million alone for the rights to Lord of the Rings. Amazon has made the two single most expensive TV shows in history with Lord of the Rings and Citadel, and the latter of which is now on pause. So I think the big issues that they have is, let me go back up here, but just to start off with a positive here, when Jen first got there, she was handing out overall deals like it was, or first look deals like she was Oprah with cars. Right? You get a first look, you get a first look. And that was part of her pitch to Hollywood to come in and make Amazon a place for big name stars. I mean, it was kind of insane, like, you know, deals to like Forrest Whitaker or Connie Britton. And it's like, I don't think Amazon's next big show is going to be from Connie Britton. I happen to love Connie Britton, but that deal doesn't make sense. But it's just a way for Amazon to say, we want big stars, we want big producers, we want big writers, we want creators, we want to be in Hollywood. And that was a clear mandate. That was one of her big three goals when I interviewed her right after she got the job. Bring in big talent, create hits, and deliver them quickly. And I think the reason that they haven't really leaned into the guy with the gun genre is because they were so focused on all these big money shows. Like the first thing that Psaki announced became Citadel. And the plans was, I remember writing up that story.
To like franchise that, right?
Yeah, they're like, we're creating a big global franchise with the Russos. And it's like, great. The Russos were hot off of Marvel, but there was no log line, there was no creative. And it's like, how do you create a global franchise from scratch? To me, you franchise something that's already working. You can't go to the drawing board and say, you know what, I'm going to create something that's the biggest show in the world. It doesn't work.
It's an interesting idea, and it's a big swing. And, you know, we talk a lot about how the industry just isn't taking big swings. So, you know, props for that. But, it just didn't seem to work out the way they wanted it to. And, you know, Natalie, like along the lines of the overall deals, like another big criticism that you always hear about Amazon is just where are all of these overalls and first looks going, right? Like Phoebe Waller-Bridge just re-upped her deal at Amazon.
It's the third one.
Yeah, the third time, right? And gosh, if you just look out there, the headlines are a little snarky about it. I think as Vulture put it, like, go girl, give us nothing. Like, and like, I mean, I'm a big fan of Fleabag and Phoebe Waller-Bridge, but like, you know, there's definitely a criticism of like, what have their overalls produced?
Well, sure. I mean, I'm a huge fan of Phoebe Waller-Bridge. I was so excited when they announced they were doing a deal with her. And there's...
Right, give us more Fleabag.
Yeah, exactly.
And that was and they won the huge bidding war for there. Everyone in town wanted to be in business with her, and Amazon was the one that won that war.
Exactly. And, you know, she was supposed to be attached to Mr. and Mrs. Smith. Then she left that project. And, you know, that's been one of their recent hits. I mean, I do think that has been a success for Amazon. She ultimately wasn't involved. Now she's supposed to be working on a Tomb Raider project. We haven't seen anything from that, even though it's been, I think, gestating for quite a while now. So it does seem that behind the scenes, they've had challenges, you know, getting these, you know, big name stars and writers to actually fulfill the terms of their contracts. I also, you know, personally don't know what, you know, some of these actors that they were signing deals with, like, I don't know what I would expect to, you know, get from Connie Britton. You know, again, not to pick on her. I'm a huge fan of Friday Night Lights, but, you know, that's not someone I would intuitively say, oh, you know, you have to have an overall deal with this person. You need 5 shows from them in the next 3 years.
It felt a little like calling dibs on major talent because they could.
Yeah, but it was also they needed to send a message to the town that Amazon was a place that they wanted big talent. I mean, not that Connie Britton's an A-lister. She's an A-lister to me because Friday Night Lights is my favorite drama of all time.
Poor
But
Connie
it's
Britton.
not,
I feel like she's getting so much shade right now. Like,
I
we
know,
all
it's
love
just
Connie Britton.
just
but-
an example. We love you, Connie. Clear eyes, full hearts, can't lose.
Well, all of this is to me highlighting something that I think was one of the major struggles for Amazon, which was I don't think they ever really defined their brand. We were talking about they wanted big franchises, but then they also had the Guy with the Gun shows, and then they also had first look deals with Phoebe Waller-Bridge, who was best known for a very prestige kind of indie show to begin with. Like, I don't know what an Amazon show is today, and that is, I think, a big part of their problem going forward.
And the genre stuff was working for them. You look at The Boys, you look at how well Fallout has done. I mean, that's one of the first 5 shows that qualified writers for that streaming bonus after the strike. You look at like the YA stuff, like The Summer I Turned Pretty has been a big hit for them, and they're supposedly out there looking for more YA to bolster that. But there's something that seemed a little, I guess, sort of disparate about all those things that never quite came together holistically. At least that's my impression.
Yeah, it felt like they were trying to do what Netflix did, which was throw everything at the wall and see what sticks. And from that, we've learned Summer I Turned Pretty is a huge hit. And Guy with a Gun, right? Jen inherited Jack Ryan. She started on that show in the second season. But that show has had more showrunners than I think it's had seasons at this point. And it's been tough behind the scenes because, there have been clashes. John Krasinski became a huge star, not because of Jack Ryan or not exclusively because of Jack Ryan, but because of A Quiet Place. And that created some tension on Jack Ryan, and he no longer needed that show. But yet Amazon desperately needed that because it became one of their signature shows. And what's more, they don't own that. It's a Paramount show, right? And, Jen can take full credit for Reacher. Fallout was a Jen show. But again, Fallout was from Lisa Joy and Jonah Nolan, the Westworld creators that Jen recruited with a big overall deal after a bidding war for their services across town. And that worked, but it also came at the expense of another show that Lisa and Jonah did, The Peripheral, which I can never pronounce properly, that they greenlit for a second season and ultimately pulled the plug on it. So that was millions of dollars down the toilet. And they've done that with a number of shows, right? Elaine, you reported Silk Spider Society, which was to be their first Marvel show with Sony, right? Angela Kang was going to run that from The Walking Dead. And then they did some casting on it and then it just went on pause and then it went away completely. And that's a lot of money. And they've done that multiple times.
All right. When we get back, we're going to take a look at what industry insiders say about the company, as well as how the company can succeed under its current and future leader, Vernon Sanders, who's the head of TV there at Amazon Studios. All right. We'll be right back after a break. Hi, I'm Elaine Lowe in Los Angeles, coming to you from the heart of Hollywood.
And I'm Minori Ravindran in London, reporting from the UK about the international market.
Together, we write the Series Business newsletter for The Ankler.
Series Business is a twice-weekly newsletter for paid subscribers to The Ankler that dives deep into everything you need to know about the rapidly evolving TV industry.
We've got an insider's perspective on where the jobs are, what's selling in the market, who's buying what kinds of shows, the new bottom line for budgets, and, of course, any and all industry shakeups.
Join us every Monday and Thursday for all the essential information you need for your job and career. Sign up to receive Series Business as part of a paid subscription on theankler.com.
This episode is brought to you by Loom by Atlassian. Are you feeling stuck at work? Get your team unstuck with Loom video messaging and move work forward. Use Loom to simultaneously record both your screen and yourself to share a quick update, provide feedback, train a colleague, and everything in between. Plus, add Loom AI to your meetings for instant written notes and recordings. Try Loom today at Loom.com. That's LOOM.com.
Welcome back to the Ankler Podcast, where we're doing a deep dive into Amazon Studios and their very sudden change in leadership this week. All right, Leslie, what is head of TV Vernon Sanders' reputation in Hollywood and within the company, and how exactly do people expect him to lead?
Well, Vernon's got a lot of people in town respect him. He's said to be very nice and very smart. He came to Amazon. I think he was Jen's first hire. He used to serve as head of current programming at NBC, which is definitely a way that a lot of execs become number one, or to run a network or a streamer is to run current or to run a studio. And he's kind of just been known reputationally at Amazon as someone who was kind of the middle ground to Jen. Despite the fact that he's been heading up TV independently for the last few years, he didn't have green light power. He had, one of the things that I heard from all the sources that I spoke to was that he was best known for saying, let me float that up to Jen, meaning I've done what I can. My hands are tied. I have nothing that I can tell you other than it's sitting with Jen and she needs to make a decision. And then it goes up to Hopkins, and who knows what happens at Amazon and how that all works these days because the goalposts keep moving.
Well, it's so interesting because Amazon has across the board been flattening their org charts. And so Jen leaving is kind of part of that. And the fact that they're not going to be replacing her is part of a company-wide trend. But I do feel like this means that they're going to be missing a kind of a key creative exec. I mean, Mike Hopkins, I've reported on him for years, all the way back to when he was running Hulu. He definitely understands how to run a streaming business, but he's never been a creative executive the way...
His background is largely distribution.
He was at Hulu, during a really key time of growth for that company as they were adding a lot of subscribers and kind of trying to chart a course post Jason Kilar, who was the kind of founding CEO of Hulu. And then he spent some time at Sony. I know he was really involved in the decision-making around greenlighting The Handmaid's Tale at Hulu, which was, a huge kind of calling card for Hulu in the early days of streaming. But he's not known as a creative executive the way that Jen is. And so I do find it interesting that, you're kind of losing that layer of a key executive who knows how to trust their gut, trust their instincts, and also has those relationships with talent. I mean, those were the relationships that landed Amazon all those big overall deals. And what does that look like when you don't have someone of Jen's caliber who can make those calls and, get some of those, big key actors and writers on board projects?
Yeah, and to her credit, was really known for being very good with talent, and talent were very receptive to her.
Perhaps, James Bond, Barbara Broccoli aside, but yes. In TV in particular.
One of the nails in her coffin, yeah.
And that's not the only nail in the coffin, according to your reporting, right, Leslie?
Yeah, definitely, the relationship with the estate of the rights holders for James Bond, that was a very, very tenuous negotiation. And obviously a very expensive deal that ultimately Amazon closed for what's been reported as north of $1 billion. And I think the second one was the insane overspending on things like Citadel specifically, which, production on season 2 has been paused. They're not happy with the creative. The reviews for season 1 were not great. Even if we go back to Lord of the Rings, the completion rate on season 1 for the world's most expensive TV show was 30%. And that's heading into season 3 at this point. And they've had to renew the deal with the showrunners of that. Citadel, the idea, as we said, was to be a global franchise. There were 2 local language spinoffs. Those are on hold as well, in addition to plans for any other spinoffs from that. I don't think that you're going to see season 2. I think Amazon is going to take that as a huge tax write-off. But yeah, I think those were the 2 biggest nails that in the coffin. And I think ultimately her relationships, she and Mike Hopkins didn't exactly see eye to eye on a lot of things. And I think ultimately over time, Jen lost the trust of the higher ups in Seattle.
So the major question, right, is what happens to their TV studio operations from here? Vernon Sanders has essentially been running their TV business for years now. What do you guys think industry insiders have in store?
Well, one of the things that I keep hearing from multiple sources, both inside and out of Amazon, is that there's probably more executive changes coming. One of the things that has occurred in the last couple of years since Vernon last did his most recent reorganization, and that was in 2022, but the head of comedy and the head of drama and the heads of limited series have all departed, and none of them were replaced. So if there are more restructurings coming, one of the big questions is if they're going to follow a traditional structure, meaning instead of organizing it by ownership, the show ownership. So you have Nick Pepper and Laura Lancaster, and under Vernon, they each oversee owned projects, meaning the things that Amazon fully owns, and then the co-productions, meaning things that are from outside studios. And that means that you have two execs overseeing comedies and dramas, and that's only separated by who owns the show and who doesn't. And
which is an unusual
very
structure.
unusual structure.
Like, you don't see that at any other studio. I've talked to agents who are like, what's with this structure of doing co-pros versus in-house owned stuff? Sometimes you're going to see overlap. Somebody suggested to me this week, why not just take the lead of what's already worked at a traditional studio, have your drama team, have your comedy team. Why do you even need this overalls team? Why do you need a team dedicated solely to IP?
These tech companies always think that they need to come to Hollywood and reinvent the wheel, and they just don't. There's reasons that having a comedy team and having a drama team work. And, it would make a lot more sense for Amazon to be structured that way.
Yeah, if it ain't broke, why fix it, right? And there's nothing wrong with having a successful broadcast style show. I mean, you look at how well CBS has done over the years. It's nothing to sneeze at with the number of millions of viewers they get. But yeah, it's interesting that one of the recommendations in your story, Leslie, was about streamlining development, because all the complaints I heard too were about this green light process. So, Natalie, it sounds like if they can really move forward in a more nimble way, that might be more akin to the kind of thing that tech companies are known for.
Yeah, absolutely. It would make a lot of sense. And, I also want to second that having a broadcast first strategy, not necessarily a bad thing, especially for a company like Amazon, which, is famously the everything store. It's really hard to be everything to every viewer. And if that's what you want to be, that's broadcast. That's not these kind of more niche, dramas and things that they, first made their mark releasing. So lean into that, have the big tent shows, have the shows that are going to, appeal to as wide an audience as possible. That's what Amazon is all about anyway. So that's not a bad strategy for them on the programming side.
I mean, it's working for Netflix too.
And it's
right? Even Max with The Pit.
I was just going to say, Max with The Pit. That's all anyone is talking about. And
procedurals are back.
Procedurals, elevated broadcast, whatever you want to call it. It's working. It's what people are interested in watching right now. And, that is the closest thing I can come up with that actually kind of resonates with what the Amazon brand is and how they can kind of try to make a clear case for what you're getting when you come to them to watch a show.
Despite all of the chaos and disorganization that we hear about over there, the town largely wants Vernon and Co. to succeed, right, Leslie? Like, having
Absolutely.
more buyers, more streaming platforms, that's how you keep a market competitive.
Exactly. I mean, every single person that I spoke with is rooting for Vernon and his team to succeed, because in this era of contraction where the peak TV era is over and everyone else is trying to be budget conscious and make only the things that they need and take a more financially responsible approach to their slates, you can't afford to lose a big buyer like Amazon, whether or not they're buying these huge packages and, high profile genre or big name IP. You can't afford to lose one of the number 2 streamer in the world.
Well, I think that this is the fear that kind of underlies, this entire conversation, is that Amazon is part of this wave of tech giants that came into Hollywood that kind of don't need Hollywood. If they decide they want to get out of the business, poof, they can do it. And they're going to be just fine. And they'll leave, a lot of destruction in their wake in Hollywood and a lot of people who, relied on their deals. So if Amazon is serious about staying in this business without Jen, and, every indication is that they are. I mean, they bought MGM. They're making more Bond movies. They need to communicate that to Hollywood and put a really clear strategy in place for what they're looking for and, what people can come to them with in terms of pitching so that, there's a more streamlined kind of direction going forward.
And they are taking some interesting swings. I mean, Natalie, you report on the creator space, and the biggest competitor for TV eyeballs is YouTube. And who do they have but Mr. Beast? And yes, a very expensive $100 million deal, but it seems like it's paying off for them so far, right?
It is. And it's not the only creator deal that they've done. They have a huge, sports business, live sports business. They did a deal with Dude Perfect a couple of years ago where Dude Perfect offered live commentary during a football game. So they're definitely taking chances in that space and and looking to other types of programming to, draw people in. And, by all accounts, the Mr. Beast show, Beast Games, was very successful, very popular for them, and they're bringing it back for a second season, I think is the hope. So there's opportunity. Amazon is such a big organization, and there's all these different tentacles. There's a lot of opportunity for them to bring their creators and talent into kind of the whole, web of Amazon and create an entertainment ecosystem. They just have to have a game plan for how to do that.
All right, listeners. Well, if you have any intel you'd like to share with us, we can be reached at podcasts@theankler.com. Otherwise, that's a wrap for us, folks. Go to theankler.com to sign up for all of our newsletters and podcasts here. And if you like this show or have feedback for us, we would love to hear from you. So leave us a rating and review from wherever you get your podcasts. That helps the show grow and reach new listeners. So we always appreciate anything you have to say. And make sure you follow The Ankler on social media @The Ankler. Thanks to Natalie Jarvie and Leslie Goldberg for joining me today. And of course, shout out to Sean McNulty for joining us from Vegas, from his windowless ballroom at CinemaCon. Hopefully he will be back with us in a more windowed climate next week. And of course, a special thanks to all of you for listening. We'll see you next time.